message for the digital generation. Hi, my name is Sean Salisbury. I live in Bangor, Maine, and I have a couple of ideas for our economy that I'd like to share with you. I think they would really help start an industrious and economic movement here in America. Now, why I say industrious and economic is because I think combining these two ideas would do more than just create jobs. Both increasing American oil and legalizing marijuana is the solution we as a country need in order to continue being a leader in the world. Understand, I mean we need both in tandem, because together they would have a way of creating jobs and products, as well as reducing the cost of transporting these goods worldwide, because the oil is coming from us. This is important because we need to find a way of lessening the cost of gas while it is still the primary source of energy on the planet. But just bear with me a while and I think you'll understand why these ideas together could provide a very nice and highly welcomed economic boom. Now first, I want to talk about the oil. I really don't think anybody believes that we as a species can't use up all the oil in the earth. We have school to teach us enough about physics by middle school at the latest to know that a finite amount of something can eventually be used up. But we're far from a tipping point to where we can't find oil, and not at a point where the carbon produced is destroying anything irreparably. It might be messing with things, but isn't that why we started looking into alternative fuels? Now think about this. The amount of carbon in the atmosphere helps dictate the temperature of the planet because of how it interacts with sunlight. Being able to control the carbon content is important because we know what current levels are doing to the environment. And without them, the temperatures would plummet. If you ask me, that's why there was an ice age after the dinosaurs. I think the asteroid burned off a lot of the carbon in the atmosphere and then killed off all the dinosaurs, and the lack of farts caused the temperature to plummet, and hey, ice age. But, all kidding aside, I know a lot of people are not fond of the idea of drilling here in America for oil. They're not thinking this through. The money made and the money saved by increasing our domestic oil puts us on a better footing with the world's economy, while still using fossil fuels as a resource. While we are still using them, we need to access them. It's important, because alternative energy is here, and it's never going away, nor should it. I don't want to see oil overproduced, because I want man 20,000 or more years from now to still be able to create cars and trucks. They should never go away. But while it is a resource and viable for income, we can use oil to make gas cheaper here in America, create jobs, use the money to fund the research that we're borrowing to invest in. Call me stupid if you will, but I think if we're going to do the research so we can be the leaders in alternative energy, we should be using the resources available to us to fund it, rather than making sure that we'll have to give it away to pay our debts. Alternative energy is going to replace oil as the primary resource of energy used in the world. And the oil that we have saved is going to plummet in value for untold numbers of generations over the next 5 billion years or so before the sun swallows us up, becoming a white dwarf. That, of course, bars man or some universal influence destroying us first. Okay, so not all kidding was aside, but whatever. Believe me, we definitely need alternative energy resources and research. I just don't believe that we should be borrowing to do that research. More to the point, using taxpayers' money in a manner that is woefully unnecessary. If you know where to look, there are servers in DC that will show you some documents. These documents show the decision to limit the drilling of American oil past a certain point was made by very few, very intuitive people. Now, they were looking at it from a globally economic standpoint, not because they wanted to save the planet the way eco-terrorists want you to think. They were looking at the long-term supply of oil in the ground. These people didn't think of alternative energy because the technology wasn't there, even though they used it in things like dams and windmills all the time. It wasn't alternative energy to them. Oil was alternative energy. But this means that their reason for saving it was because keeping American oil in the ground until the global oil content was at a critical point gave America an economic standpoint in that genre to move forward with, making us wealthy beyond imagining for that time. That doesn't exist anymore. Alternative energy is here, and it is here to stay, and it will continue on and be more than we can even imagine it now. But there are many forms of it. There's electric and solar, wind, geothermic, even nuclear. Now, before you get irritated with the idea of nuclear energy, let's just take a moment to remember that you can get a nuclear reactor the size of a 2-car garage, and it can power a small city. An 8-man crew could keep this manned indefinitely, giving the people that they need to do normal operation as well as people to respond to anything. Understand, we've conquered nuclear power in every sense. And these reactors create so little fissionable material that you would have to break into 8 of them to create anything with more devastating consequences than a normal IED. Keeping them separate would allow you to make terrorists getting access to 8 reactors virtually impossible, let alone more so they can create anything resembling a nuclear device. With a small city for each of them, or even a large city with multiple ones in different sectors, you can add them to the current power grids anywhere, and it would be almost instantaneous transition of power. Now keep in mind, you want geologically stable parts of the Earth's crust. Let's remember, nuclear power is not a worldwide solution, but it is a relatively inexpensive energy to invest in and to maintain. I know some people think about the buildup of nuclear waste and cringe, but remember, when push comes to shove, we have the ability to send things into space. And it's getting cheaper because of research and development all over the world by both government and civilian companies. But space and nuclear energy is a different discussion altogether. Let's get back to oil. Again, the planet is not at a crucial point, and while the oil is still the driving force and viable for a sustained income, an alternative to the alternative, if you will, we need to seriously consider whether we as a country can continue to allow a resource with a finite viable income timeline to go to waste. While we're using the oil to reduce domestic costs, we should also be using that to research alternative energy. It would allow us to get a competitive edge by not borrowing money to invest, therefore hedging against the debt our country has already accrued. Now, I need to bring marijuana into the conversation here, because it's going to help in tandem with the continuation of the oil discussion. By way of the oil used in transporting the goods you can create with hemp. The idea of the country taking over hemp production of the world, though, is what I want to touch on. Hemp is a very useful plant. With it, you do have marijuana. This is also a useful plant. Those of you who've smoked it know what it does. You also know different types have different buzzes. But that's neither here nor there. It is, however, the issue many people have with the plant, forgetting that it has one of the highest rates of photosynthesis you can find in a plant, creating oxygen, maintaining the atmosphere's ratio to carbon more efficiently per acre than a rainforest. Doesn't seem to matter. But remember, because of it, we have hemp. Hemp seeds can be used in so many ways, and hemp, that it's difficult for me to understand why it's still illegal. Now, the companies that stopped it with propaganda generations ago should definitely have already gotten on board with the idea of widespread distribution of hemp products worldwide by now. They're not idiots and fools. These are successful capitalists. But we're talking about hemp and things that we can do and that it can do, like creating alternative fuels from the seeds, high thread count sheets by properly processing the raw materials, countless numbers of other textiles. We all know at this point you can make a lot of things from hemp. But we're afraid of legalizing the green monster because we believe that it influences people to experiment with other drugs. To which any rational mind has to understand that the people who have problems with drugs are the people who would have sought them out with or without pot. And blaming a plant with less deleterious effects than tobacco, while creating a sense of satisfaction and wonder with the world, for people who seek out more stopped fooling people decades ago. Nobody's addicted to marijuana. Now, there are some people who are much better with it than without, but isn't that just another reason why we should allow them to have access to that product? Seems like a better world to me. But let's talk about the usefulness of hemp again, and why we should as a country more than just consider the legalization of this most utilitarian and renewable of resources. If you consider the size of this country and the amount of land that is currently not being used for anything productive, we are in a prime position to capitalize on the supply and demand of the world's hemp products. There are a lot of small providers worldwide. Even the larger countries who do allow production don't do so on a large scale. If just 1/5 of this country started large-scale production of hemp products, we would instantly become the largest provider of natural fiber ropes, oils, and textiles in the world, on the order of 80% or so, even if just New England, and that's the smallest portion of this frickin' country, were to get involved in worldwide hemp production, we would be 80+% of the world's hemp. Think about those numbers, okay? But if you add to that the production of American oil to supplement the shipping costs, you'd be in a prime position not only to provide products that the world wants and needs, but you'd also be making sure that getting those products to people the world over is less expensive, thereby keeping the bottom line low, providing a highly profitable business model. Yes, this means that people who want marijuana for the sole purpose of being able to smoke it would have what they want. But at the same time, the people who in America have a true entrepreneurial spirit would have an entirely new place to apply their craft. The cost of oil being lower would mean more affluence here in America as well, allowing families to do more of the things they want to do, and in some cases have had to completely forego. The possibility for a job in the hemp industry would excite a lot of people, and the jobs created in the oil industry would be compounded as well. I don't just mean the oil rigs and the drilling platforms and the pipelines. I mean lower costs for shipping companies who would have to expand their operations, hiring more drivers, more laborers to load and unload the hemp and increased oil products. The people experimenting with alternative energies would have an influx of funding that isn't being taken from taxpayers or loans that further put this country in debt. This would propel that research further, bringing us where we are headed faster, and we'd be able to do it by not continuing to break the backs of our people with the debt and the inevitable servitude that it will rain down on our heads. This would make many things easier, not just for us, and not just for portions of the population, but for everybody. Now, does this mean that the population can now enjoy a harmless buzz that doesn't create even the problematic situations that alcohol does? Yes. Don't get me wrong, I like to drink just as much as the next guy. I'm not down on that at all. Alcohol is good. Marijuana is good. Tobacco, it's good and bad. Go with just the nicotine, man. Do the tablets. That shit's good. It really is. You get all the greatness of the frickin' nicotine without the carcinogens. Try it. Rambling. Sorry. Now, I want legal pot because I don't want to be labeled a felon just because I like to pack my pipe occasionally. One thing you need to think about is, unlike other drugs in the world that come from plants or other places, this plant requires no alterations, no distillings, no additions of other chemicals. It is what it is. Yes, they've found ways to increase the THC content of some of the breeds of the plant. But remember, THC, unlike other drugs that are out there, isn't man-made. On top of that, it doesn't have to be altered to create the buzz. There is no research that shows it to be bad for you physically unless you're allergic to it, in which case this drug isn't for you. Let's fucking be honest. But, all that aside, we're going to get back to the oil and marijuana together idea, and why that can be a catalyst that propels this nation into the future with a more stable foundation to work from. And, from the start, begins to pay back some of the debt that our leaders have put on our shoulders and our children's shoulders. Remember, The current leadership isn't thinking about you or about your children. They're thinking about themselves and their children. While we suffer, their socialist agenda makes them richer. And if they get their way and this country does change, they are the elite class that rules us in the way that the representative republic allows you currently to rule them. This is important, and you need to take time and understand the representative republic. But I'm not going to tandem on that. While we suffer, they get richer. And if this change happens, we're just in trouble. I want you to be certain on where I stand, though. I love capitalism. Unlike socialism, it rewards a person for having the drive and will to succeed, not the drive and will to oppress other people in their freedom, providing opportunity for every person, no matter their station in life or where they were raised or the background they've come from, to make a name for themselves and their family. It promotes excellence in a person. Does it sometimes create a monster? Yes, it does. But that's why we have the representative republic, to keep them and democracy in check. The representative republic is there to give you and me and everybody else in this country the power to make them do right. Any other system of government does not give you that power. And the socialist economy may appeal to a growing base here in America, but you've got to remember that the freedoms and liberties that you have are founded on the idea that we as a people, we as a country, are a place where anyone from anywhere can come to make something of ourselves. A socialist country is divided. It's devoted to keeping classes separate. Its whole basis is that a small group of people should hold all of the power and all of the wealth, while the masses are nothing but pawns that they throw away on the chessboard that is their life. For some people, my point of view is completely wrong. But that's because they're the kind of person who doesn't want personal responsibility in their life. They don't want to be responsible for the things that happen to them, and they don't want to take the blame for the choices they make. They want to believe it's someone else's fault. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everyone who has never made anything happen in their life is to blame for their situation. There are people whose lives have been affected greatly by other people's choices. But I want you to remember that in a representative republic, even you have the voice to be heard if you just put it out there. And you need to make the choice to let it be heard. But only in America can anybody, no matter who, what, how, when, or where they are, be heard. We are the digital generation. It's time we made ourselves known. And it's time we took the reins from this generations before us and molded an America where we are not only proud of ourselves, but we solve the problems that face us. The biggest problem facing us currently is sustained economic viability. Combining two very different and highly polarizing things together for the right reasons is the best chance that we have. It's something only the most polar of people could have problems with. But I'm calling to everyone from my generation. I'm calling to all of you who grew up with me in the digital age. We can see the future far clearer than our current leaders, and it's time we stood up and started making sure that the world is ready for that future. It's not their fault they can't see in digital. Their time was analog. Things took longer. Things were harder. Now we have instant access to all the information in the world. More than that, every day it gets faster and faster without showing any signs of slowing. Get that quote? Remember, our parents and grandparents are lost on this ride through the digital factory that the earth has become. We need to continue where they left off, and we need to show them the realization of the dream that was America. A place where it doesn't matter who you might be or where you come from. No matter your station in life, you can make a difference. We've learned from our forefathers' mistakes, but we have also learned from the things they did right. And we can see where we need to go, and we're ready to take the world there. Now, this brings me to a gripe that unfortunately pertains to most of us, even myself until here recently. Okay? And that is that I'm sick of people who are something Americans. Okay? I don't want Irish American. I don't want African American. I don't want Asian American. I don't want Hispanic American. I want American first. American something. I want American Irish. I want American African. I want American Asian. I want American Hispanic. I want American first. Because this is America. And you are American. It doesn't matter where you came from. And I'm not asking you to forgo your lineage and forget where you came from. Please, for fuck's sake, don't ever do that. Because without the combination of all of those different cultures and the understanding that comes with learning each other's cultures, that's what creates the freedoms, the rights, the privileges, the honor, the things that we have as a nation and as a country. That corroboration of all of the races of man, which is kind of bullshit, because if you think about it, it's less than 0.01% of your fucking genome that changes the color of your skin. That shit's just, we need to get away from the race bullshit. That is just bullshit, because there's so minute of a difference in my DNA and your DNA that it's foolish, it's stupid. The only reason that there are slight subtle differences in man is because when we moved out of the African continent and started to colonize this planet, our body evolved the specific genomes that were needed to make life at that point on the earth perfect for our species. We are one species. We aren't a race of humans or races of humans. We are a race of humans. But that's neither here nor there. Again, if you're going to live in America, I want to start a new movement. I want to be American first. Not second, first. Again, don't forget who you are and where you come from, because that would just destroy what this country is trying to be. Remember who you are, remember where you come from, remember your lineage, keep your family history alive, keep your nation's history alive. But if you're going to live in America, be American. So, if you're one of the few who managed to get through this entire video, thanks. You've been really patient. I appreciate it. I hope I touched something you might have enjoyed or resounded with at least a little bit. Again, my name is Sean Salisbury. I live in Bangor, Maine. I want feedback on this. So, my email address is vindrel@gmail.com. Send me an email. Let me know what you think.